More about the Marijuana Business Association and visit mjba.net to join today. That's mjba.net. It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Priscilla Simon.
Hey everyone, this is your 420 Radio News for Tuesday, July 8th, 2014. Today was the first day for legal cannabis sales in the state of Washington. 420 Radio was live at the grand opening of Cannabis City in the SoDo district of Seattle, the only marijuana retailer to be opening today. National news media and international reporters lined the streets of busy 4th Avenue, and a line of eager patrons waiting to make their first legal purchase snaked around behind the building. Magical Butter's Jeremy Cooper, in his trademark bright green wig, was third in line and introduced us to Deb Green, the grandmother who was first in line. Deb had been waiting since 3 p.m. yesterday and was even interviewed by ABC's Good Morning America. Allison Holcomb, the architect of the I-502 legislation initiative that made today possible, spoke to the assembled reporters and thanked all the staff and supporters from the campaign. Pete Holmes, the Seattle city attorney, made news when he announced, quote, "I'm here to personally exercise myself this new freedom," end quote, meaning Seattle's top law enforcement official is buying marijuana. Russ will have more coverage of the events from today in Seattle later in the show.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing, and I've got that audio on board for you right now. Take a listen. This is Pete Holmes, the top cop in Seattle, admitting he's going to buy weed.
But the most important takeaway for everyone here is that today marijuana sales became legal. And I'm here to personally exercise myself this new freedom.
Can you imagine the top cop in your city? I mean, that's something you guys didn't even get in Denver when you legalized there.
No.
I mean, your city officials are against it, weren't they, Priscilla?
Yeah, I can imagine the chief of police standing next to me at the dispensary.
What a beautiful world we live in.
The state of Tennessee is the latest to begin a system of drug testing applicants for welfare. A new law that took effect this week in Tennessee will drug test state welfare applicants. People who apply to the state's Temporary Assistant for Needy Families, or TANF program, Families First, will have to answer 3 questions on a form about potential drug use in order to receive benefits. If they answer yes to any of the questions, they'll be referred to urine testing. If they refuse to take the drug test, they won't be able to get benefits. If the test is positive, they'll have to complete a treatment or recovery plan after a substance abuse evaluation. After that, the applicants will have to take another test, and if it comes back positive, they will be cut off from welfare for 6 months. Programs that drug test welfare applicants are misguided. Recipients don't use drugs at any higher rate than the general population. In Florida, in fact, just 2% of recipients failed drug tests in 2011, while 8% of the state's residents use illegal drugs. In Utah, just 12 welfare recipients tested positive in the year after it enacted a drug testing requirement. In Minnesota, 0.4% of cash assistance recipients have felony drug convictions compared to the state's general population.
Wow, every time this subject comes up, it always hits me personally because I was one of those kids that grew up thanks to, temporary assistance and food stamps and all that kind of stuff. And one of the ways that these bills get so politically popular and are so easy for these legislators to push is that people who don't smoke pot, even people who do smoke pot and have a job, they often get this attitude of, well, I have to take a drug test to get my job. They should have to get a drug test to get welfare off of the money that I'm, working so hard on. Well, first of all, understand that most people on welfare, most people getting temporary assistance are people that have been working class people who have paid into the system, people who have made their contribution to society and now just need that safety net, need that little bit of help. And as we've seen in those statistics, they don't test for drugs at a rate higher than the general population. The reason why is because drugs cost money. It's pretty simple. Drugs cost money. And most people aren't addicted to drugs. Most people that use drugs use them, and they use them responsibly, and they go back to work or do whatever they've got to do. And so what you're doing here is you take a situation where you're punishing people who are responsible, and then that small sliver of people who are actually addicted to hard drugs, people that actually have a problem and can't quit, do you think that threatening taking away their welfare check does any good? No, it's not. That's not the way addiction works. When you have an addiction, you do things that are against your best interest, like, smoking crack instead of, getting your welfare check, right? And then that person then becomes desperate. They got to find a way to live. They got to find a way to pay the bills. They will resort to, whatever means necessary. So these kind of drug testing for welfare things, people are trying to do the right thing. They think they're doing the right thing, but it's one of those things, like many things in the drug war, where the unintended consequences are much worse than what it is that you think the problem is in the first place.
U.S. soccer goalie Tim Howard says he was, quote, randomly drug tested after his phenomenal World Cup performance. When asked on the Mike and Mike show if he heard from his teammates right after the World Cup loss, he said, quote, I got dragged into drug testing again, randomly, so I didn't hear all of them. I think once I got back into the room, it was quiet. Like you said, it was somber. No words can make you feel better. Some guys had tears. Some guys kept sitting quietly. It's tough. Losing in sports, no matter what sport it is, feels exactly the same. It's gut-wrenching. We just tried to shower and get out of there as quickly as we could and get back to our families, end quote. These, quote, random drug tests aren't exceedingly out of the ordinary. 7 Costa Rica players were tested after the team beat Italy 2 weeks ago. FIFA checks for red cell and hemoglobin discrepancies, hormone levels, and anabolic steroids.
Wow, yeah, random drug testing here. It's just this idea that people couldn't have possibly had such a great game. Tim Howard couldn't have possibly done so well unless he was doped up. And this is where there's this kind of a problem with drug testing in general, is it begins by having a culture of distrust in what people are doing and what people's abilities are. And, this idea that they're going to be so hopped up on these human growth hormones or these alternative steroids, anabolic steroids that they might be using, it just seems to me that we need to evolve to a place where we recognize that athletes are going to try to get whatever competitive advantage they want. And by prohibiting these things outright, all we do is we set up a culture of distrust, and we make an arms race where the guys making the next supplement are trying to keep ahead of the drug testing technology. And then we end up having to see our heroes fall. People like Lance Armstrong, or people like the baseball players that get drug tested and their records are called into question and so forth. Instead, why don't we recognize that chemistry exists, biochemistry exists, and if there's a way to improve human performance safely, why don't we let people try to do that? I mean, we let people repair their elbows with surgery. We let people, do all sorts of things with sports therapy and sports training that never used to exist. So why can't we accept that there's going to be advances in chemistry and biochemistry and work to make safer, better ways of enhancing human performance instead of just trying to ban it outright, which, as we've seen, prohibition rarely works.
Cannabis gains acceptance as medicinal product in Germany. Many countries have legalized cannabis as medicine. In addition to the Netherlands, medical marijuana is legal in Spain, Portugal, Finland, and certain U.S. states. In these countries, cannabis in medicinal form can be had on presentation of prescription. In Germany, growing cannabis for medical purposes has been legal since May 2011. Before then, special permits from the Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices had to be obtained. Cannabis-containing drugs are usually prescribed as a finished product with cannabis extract added, such as a spray. The medicine is sprayed into the oral cavity. From there, it spreads rapidly in the blood. Germany's government opposes attempts to legalize cannabis and cannabis products. Instead, it wants to strengthen prevention efforts against the drug, but experts believe that more severe penalties for cannabis use do not lead to a decline in consumption.
Yeah, we've seen that, from country to country, from state to state. The difference in your cannabis laws usually doesn't make much of a statistical difference in how much that you're using. But I think Germany and these European countries, the more news media they get from the United States of us legalizing and moving forward with medicinal and recreational marijuana, the harder it is for their governments to continue to repress this. Already they've got the Netherlands, they've got Portugal, they've got such great examples happening already in Europe to show that there is a reason to move forward. And as I talk to my friends in England, they say that's all they hear about in America is the marijuana legalization. It's just saturating their airwaves. So we are going to go very, very far in legalization here. That's going to help us move into legalization all across the world because we started this prohibition. And by God, as Americans, we're going to end it. And I've got one more story. Priscilla didn't get this one. I wasn't able to get it in under deadline, so I'll just take care of it from here. It's the state of Arkansas. A lot of people, this kind of slipped under the radar, but Arkansas Medical Cannabis Act has reached its deadline for the 2014 ballot. They've turned in signatures. They still have yet to do the signature gathering. The group is Arkansans for Compassionate Care. They were counting signatures all through Sunday night, hoping to make it to the ballot. Monday was their deadline. Of course, they've got the requisite doctor saying that it would be a big mistake to legalize it, and he's a Northwest Arkansas physician. He says, quote, "As a physician, I have to be sure about what I'm prescribing. I don't want to legalize something. I don't want to go through the legislative process and bypass what we do with all drugs, going through screening, through the FDA, clinical trials, and so on." But, of course, as we know, the FDA rarely issues trials for things that show the medical benefit of cannabis. And in the case of our Arizona researcher, Dr. Suzanne Sisley, was just recently fired after she got permission to do the first FDA research on medicinal cannabis for post-traumatic stress diagnosis. So, we know how those regular channels work, Dr. Bledsoe, and they don't seem to be working for patients when it comes to medical cannabis. And one person interviewed in this, a Sidney Woods, explained how he thought it was more natural and that his family, his aunt, had tried medical marijuana. She was on, quote, high-grade OxyContin and Valium and all those painkillers, and they don't really work for her. But she tried marijuana once or twice, and it's worked wonders for her, end quote.
Good.
Yeah, it's just amazing what we've got here with medical cannabis. And I know you're out there in Colorado. You've probably got tons of stories of people and their benefits from cannabis.
Yeah, it definitely hits close to home for me because my mom suffers a lot and she's on those heavy drugs just like, that woman there. And cannabis is definitely something that's helped her. So it hits home.
Well, when we get back into the studio, The Nation magazine did a great 5-page article on the intertwining financial relationship between the Coalition for Anti-Drugs, the CADCA, and the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids with all the makers of OxyContin, Vicodin, and Zohydro. Surprise! All right, well, that sound means it's time for our safe